So just as an example of some of Rush's lyrical topics, I just mentioned the various things that the early years were mostly sword and sorcery, fantasy, science fiction inspired lyrics with other, things about just basic day-to-day life, or songs about touring on the road, coming of age. Those are very common themes. And then in the early 80s they started broadening the topics to include fame, living in the suburbs, politics, science, technology. The common theme in Rush has been the individual, man as an individual versus the collective, and also man and technology and nature. And the symbiosis between those have been very common themes. The science fiction songs did stop around the early 80s. Permanent Waves had, like, you could say one sci-fi song, Natural Science, although it's really more of a song about science and nature. And Moving Pictures had Red Barchetta, which told a story about a guy who basically takes his uncle's car sometime in the future when motor cars are banned and takes it on the road, and that was pretty cool. And then Grace Under Pressure had The Body Electric, which is roughly based, I think, on an old Ray Bradbury story about an android walking through the desert, and its computer mind starts to break down. And since then they haven't had any sci-fi, really. Although, from what I'm hearing about the new album coming next year, Clockwork Angels, it sounds like they are going back into somewhat of a science fiction territory, and it's not very clear on the couple songs that have been released early that they did, but time will tell. Other topics have included evolution, spirituality, travel, fate, chance, different symbiotic relationships, and then also in recent years, healing, some darker subjects, the current state of the world. Those are very common themes. So basically, like I said, they went through kind of an evolution in their sound. The first 4 albums are basic 70s hard rock with progressive flourishes, some extended length songs, but they were one of the first bands to kind of combine prog rock with heavy metal, you could say. So they were, in a lot of ways, one of the first progressive metal bands. Although I think you could also argue for Judas Priest and some other groups. But yeah, and then on Farewell to Kings, they explored more textures and more acoustic stuff, a little more experimental, and then but they got kind of tired of that by the late 70s, doing the cliched progressive rock songs. Wisely so, too, because they've always been good about staying modern. So with 1980s Permanent Waves, they stripped everything down. The songs were a lot shorter. They were getting more influences from reggae and new wave, which were coming out at the time, and scored their first, several breakouts as far as radio with Spirit Radio, Free Will, and stuff like that. And just 1 year later, they cranked out, what's well regarded as, their biggest album as far as commercial sales and most well-known, thanks to classic rock radio, and that's Moving Pictures. That has their biggest hit, Tom Sawyer, as well as the classics, Limelight, YYZ, Red Barchetta, and so on. And I think it was kind of a catch-22 though in that case, because I'm sure Rush has gotten sick of playing Tom Sawyer on some tours. I think they enjoy it more now these days, ever since they came back in 2002. But I could see them getting tired of it in the late 80s or 90s when they were playing it. But yeah, so and then came Signals in 1982. More synthesizers, the keyboards were more clearly defined. Geddy started playing keyboards about 1/3 of the time, and then bass about the other 2/3. And yeah, they explored more pop directions, more new wave. It was the 80s, and it's funny, Signals and Grace Under Pressure, I hear a big Police influence. Not just in the keyboards and the songwriting, but Neil's drumming kind of had a Stuart Copeland feel on some songs, and Alex's guitar tone was very reminiscent of Andy Summers. And it's not something I really noticed too much until later when I became a Police fan and hadn't listened to Rush for a while. And then I went back and listened to Rush again after absorbing the Police, and I was like, wow, there's Police influences all over, especially on Signals. Digital Man, New World Man, those sound like the Police a lot. And The Enemy Within on Grace Under Pressure, again, has kind of a rock reggae Police feel. And that's my favorite period of Rush, is the synthesizer period, 1982 to 88. The Show of Hands was probably the album that broke through and made me a hardcore fan. And Exit Stage Left also. When I first became a really big fan, it was Exit Stage Left and A Show of Hands. Rush Live is sort of that's their fort. Notice I didn't say forte, I said fort. It's really fort. Look it up on Wikipedia. And so yeah, Show of Hands, and then I got the VHS and watched it like a million times.